Today's guest is one of those rare IT leaders that makes you wonder if the rest of us have been running on half a battery. Earl Newsome is the Chief Information Officer at Cummins and has held numerous leadership positions across various Fortune 200 companies. But his story is so much bigger than his resume. He's a West Point grad, a U.S. Army veteran, a football player, a mentor, and yes, even a die-hard Dallas Cowboys fan. Every character has its flaws. Earl's career tracks right alongside the evolution of IT leadership itself. From the early days where being an IT leader meant hiding in the data center and not coming out, to today where he's talking about business strategy and AI with the board. That's why he's the perfect guest to dig into today's topic. I'm your host, Douglas Wood, and this is What is IT? And today, we're talking IT leadership. Hey, Earl, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you join us here today. I've known you for a long time, but to help get our listeners a little bit acquainted, I'd like to ask you a couple of background questions, if that's okay.
Sure. Let's go ahead.
All right. First, I got to start with the the Whitney Houston story. A bouquet of roses, your phone number inside. What was the plan there? More importantly, did it work?
Well, these were the this is the pre Bobby Brown days. And so, my Whitney Houston story is really pretty simple. So I often talk about what is your first concert you've been to and what's your most memorable, right? And so when I get to answer the most memorable one, I talk about, I was in a small venue with a group of people, probably 400 people. This was in Phoenix or so, and it probably was 1,000 people, whatever it was, but a small venue. And this artist was up there singing, her favorite song, and it was Whitney Houston. Singing "Saving All My Love for You" was a song that she was singing at the time, right? And I had a date with me, and I don't remember who that is. You understand why? Because when the flower person, came down with the flowers and to sell, to everybody in the audience, I bought a flower, and of course I promptly walked past my date, went down to the circular stage, and handed Whitney Houston, right, a rose when she was singing "Saving All My Love for You," right? And so, ostensibly I had my number in there, so if she ever wanted to call me, she could. I'm available, right? And of course she never did. But that's my most memorable concert.
Amazing story. Amazing. Another Earl Newsome defining topic, we can't get into the podcast without it, is the Dallas Cowboys. The boys. What's tougher for you, being a Dallas Cowboys fan or leading IT at a Fortune 200 company?
It's a tough one. Let me think about that. Being a Cowboys fan. I mean, it's clearly more difficult being a Cowboys fan, especially a long-suffering one. I mean, we still live in the 90s. So so Cowboy fans, we haven't quite made it into the year 2000 yet. But we're still waiting. So we're still, wearing our Emmitt Smith jerseys and our Troy Aikman colors and our
the good old days.
Yeah, we still go to the games with those on, and just in hopes of that when we win our next playoff game. Now the goal is no longer a Super Bowl. The goal is now win a playoff game, and then we'll be back to our glory days.
Back.
I often say that there are, three types of people on this planet, right? Those that love the Cowboys, right? Those that are morons, and those that don't know anything about football. So you can decide.
There's a fan if I ever heard one.
Which group you're in.
I love it.
That's spoken as a true Cowboys fan.
Now you're not just a fan. You once played football. You were actually a football player out there, and now you're also, forgive the term, a bit of a computer nerd. So how did you bring those two worlds together and get into leadership? Like, how did football and love for technology come together in terms of success for you?
Oh, that's a great question. It's interesting. I'm a football player. I played football in high school and got actually nominated to All State. So I was an All State football player coming out of Arizona. And so when you think about how it came together, it's interesting that when I got to college, I went to West Point, and I sought to be, challenged by three different things. I wanted to be challenged athletically, academically, and mentally, right? It's kind of my goal when I was going to West Point, and West Point delivers on all three, right? You get challenged athletically, so I played football, and I was a dual sport athlete, football and track, and I actually went to the NCAA's in track. I threw the hammer two times, and so I went to the Eugene and threw the hammer at the nationals. I was a computer nerd and was challenged, academically. I was able to take advanced courses and advanced individual study, actually with Dr. Fox Linton. And we were able to do some independent study where I was able to, develop some interesting solutions for the military for traceability and trackability in inclement weather. And so, some of the things I did at the military was actually for the DoD. And so I think that prepares you. So bringing, athletics and academics together is what West Point does. And so that's brought, sports and technology together for me.
And is it something you still apply? Like, is that athletic mindset combined with technology something you drive into your staff, into your work life? Is it still present?
I would say it's present and a little bit, but I think more is my military background is more present in my current leadership than anything else. And so, and I think some of that stuff does apply in sports. And so, it's a good way to think about it because I think about, people, when I got out of the military were really probably two or three basic things. Number one is this idea of how you take care of soldiers, right? So taking care of soldiers is the best way to ensure that they come back from harm's way with as little harm as possible. We want them to come back safely, right? And so the way that we try to ensure soldiers can come back safely as best as we possibly can is we've got to make sure that they're equipped well, trained well, and practice well, right? And so this notion of ensuring soldiers have the right equipment to get the job done. They have training on the use of that equipment, and then they have practice on utilizing that equipment, right? And in, non-harmful ways such that when they eventually get deployed into battle, they can come back as unharmed as possible, as safe as possible. So I think that to me is what I do as I've taken forward in my consulting career and in my civilian career in corporate America is making sure our employees are equipped well, they have the right equipment to get the job done. We train them on the use of that equipment. Then we give them practice, so they can learn. And through their learnings, they get better at it and they ultimately get successful. That way, when we deploy them out to projects, and I'll call that battle, they come back unharmed, right? And so that's and I think that same thing happens in athletics, right? You want to have the right equipment to get the job done, right? So when you're out there playing golf or you're out there playing pickleball or whatever your chosen athletic endeavor is, you want to make sure you have the right equipment, you have training on how to use that equipment, and then you practice. Yeah, and practice does matter. Forget Allen Iverson, excuse me. Practice does matter.
Hey, listener, editor here. Usually my editor's notes are covering confusing technical terms and nerd alerts. And in this case, this is more of a sports nerd alert, where Earl referenced the nearly 20-year-old rant about practice by NBA player Allen Iverson. He was the AI before today's AI. Get it? Here's a quick clip to get you caught up in case you forgot this historic moment.
Sum it up when you just talk about practice. We sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. Listen, we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
And so, how you practice is how you play, right? And so I think, that one principle of ensuring that we take care of our people is similar to what I do. The second one is this notion of leadership. And I call it 360-degree leadership. And that's about being strategically competent, technically competent, and tactically competent. In the military context, strategic competence is about taking the hill. taking the right hill and ensuring, when I point my troops at the hill, we point them at the right hill, right? And so you got to make a strategic decision about which hills to take. And then tactical is kind of describing the steps and the methodology of how we're going to take that hill, with as few casualties as possible, right? And then, technical thing is you got to roll up your sleeves and help along the way. So that as a lieutenant in the military, you learned you got to be out there with your troops, right? You got to be where it happens, right? You can't be a remote commander or a leader of people and be successful. You have to be a present commander and leader of people, right? That's absolutely important. So be there with your troops. And so that's something that I've taken, forward, this idea about, strategic, tactical, and technical leadership, and taking it forward in my consulting career and in my civilian career in corporate America is we've got to pick the right targets, the right objectives. We've got to chart the path to those objectives. And then we got to help ensure that we, be involved, a leader. So I think that's the second thing that I took from the military that I applied throughout my career. And the third thing is, and this is amazing. I remember sitting in an audience with the 4-star general, and he was the commander general of FORSCOM, and we were at West Point, and he was giving us his speech before we went out there and started to engage troops. He said, remember, these troops are there for 2 primary reasons. Those 2 primary reasons why people join the military are because of these 2 commercials. Number 1 is be all that you can be. And the second one is this concept of we do more in the morning than most people do all day, right? And so he charged us with that. We owe our soldiers that, challenging them to be all they can be, right? And then making sure that they're actively involved in getting something done, right? They don't want to be wasted. They don't want to have wasted resources. They don't want their time wasted. They don't want their service wasted, right? Because they're here to serve. And so
That's
people
right.
who want to serve, who got that service mentality, want their efforts to be put to service for good, right? And so that's our challenge as leaders, right? And that we have to really be able to making sure we help people be all that they can be, which means be the best version of yourself, right? A real leader, right, can help you unlock whatever it is, that magic that's inside you, to help you be all that you can be. Right. And be the very best version of yourself, as well as this idea of ensuring that your service is put to use. Right. And so people want, I ultimately believe that everyone wants their service to be put to use, and then the results of their service to be the good outcome, for whatever purpose or whatever objective it is, that the service is put to use to good, and that outcome is well received.
Yeah, that's a powerful takeaway, right? Because even in the trenches of IT, people, you're getting a paycheck, but everybody wants to be of service, right? They want to do a job, they want to have a challenge, they want to feel like there's purpose behind the work that they're putting forward.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. What is there's that saying that's out there, what's a customer to us? I've actually adapted that, to IT and to what's a business colleague to us, and talking about, a business colleague, and this was actually done in the military too, and people have used this same mantra and they've added to it and that kind of stuff. But the customer or our business colleague to an IT professional, is the lifeblood of our business. We exist. Our paychecks get generated because they have a need that we can meet. Right. That's what the purpose is they are the lifeblood of our organization. They're the lifeblood of our service. And so it's to our business colleagues, our internal business colleagues, our external customers who we serve. And in our service, they get the outcomes that help them get their jobs done, whatever that might be.
That's a great perspective. And, as you know, the podcast is called What is IT, right? So I have to ask you the question, which I ask every guest to you, what is IT?
Wow. That's a good one. What is IT? That's a great question. I mean, to me, IT is, a tool. And it's a tool that's in the hand of, us as IT professionals to help the business achieve the outcomes that it needs. And so, I consider IT, like a tool, and I think the wielder of the tool, determines its outcome, right? And so I think, if you compare IT to a hammer, right? So a hammer is not either inherently good nor bad, right? But the outcome of the utilization of that hammer is determined by its wielder, right? So I can either use a hammer to break a window or to build a house, right? But the hammer inherently doesn't do either, right?
Right.
It's the user of the hammer that determines its outcome. And so we as IT professionals can use our tool called technology to help build beautiful homes, right? We can use this tool, right, to create beautiful outcomes for the people that we serve. I'm reminded of, my leadership purpose, and and part of what we do and is think about, comes from the book True North, right? That says, if you understand your purpose, you can understand why you do the things that you do, right? And so my leadership purpose is building a world without limits so people can be all that they can be while creating some magic all along the way. Right.
Wow.
And that comes from my concept of, I've moved around a lot. And so everywhere I went, I've always been a builder. Right. And so I want to build something. Right. That's the outcome that I want. I want to build something, and I want to build it in a way that reduces the constraints on humans. And when you reduce the constraints on humans, that enables them to be the very best versions of themselves, be all they can be. Right. Like the military has taught me. And then if people are being all they can be, they can create and deliver some magic all along the way. And so when I think about technology, I think technology that way. Technology is a tool that we can use to build a world, right? Without limits. Technology can help blind people see. Technology can help, you buy a pet rock from the website. Technology can unlock, those folks that are locked, into, many different, locked into a world. It can unlock that world. So
Right.
technology can be that thing that builds this world, that takes away the limits, that enables people to be all that they can be. And when we do that, we can deliver magic. In fact, there's a quote that says, advanced technology should be indistinguishable from magic, right? And so that's the way I think about IT. I think about how do we wield this tool that we have so we can build a world that has no limits, so that people can be the truly best versions of themselves and create some magic all along the way.
Tell me a little bit more about the how people can leverage that tool, right? So not just within IT, but for business leaders or for people outside of technology looking in, what's the best thing that they can do in order to leverage that tool of IT to build that better world?
I think we have to begin with the outcome, right? I think businesses should come up with business ideas and business models that we can then apply technology to. I often think about, what does innovation mean to me? So innovation to me is the intersection between business idea and invention where there's value, right? That's the true definition of innovation to me. And so invention is the side of the technologist, creating the inventions, understanding those inventions, et cetera. The business idea, right, is the domain of our business colleagues, as well as our IT colleagues. But those business ideas can come from anywhere. But they can come from the businesses, they can come from our suppliers, they can come from the marketplace, they can come from IT. But we want to harvest those business ideas. And I think business people should be in the world, in the model of creating those business ideas and creating those user stories, creating, the desire to build outcomes that push the business forward. And then IT works to deliver those outcomes, right? And so that to me is how business leaders can actually help IT, is really come to us with those crazy ideas. I love it. That, I often think about this. I call it the 3-question strategy for business leaders. And I say, what questions are you asking today that you want better answers to? So tell me that. I'm getting this information. Boy, I really would like this because I can make better business decisions if I had that increased information. The second thing is, what questions have you always wanted to ask, but were afraid to because you didn't think IT could answer it? So give me those questions, right? And I'm challenging the listeners to this podcast. Send us those questions. I'd love to get them. What are those questions that you always wanted to ask IT, but you were afraid to? So tell us that, and we'll try to find a way to answer those questions. And the third one is really for IT to have a seat at the table is for us to present to you questions that you should be asking but aren't, right? Because we can see from our seat, all these amazing things out there that people aren't asking, right? And so go to your business leader, IT professional, and say, well, look, why aren't you asking this? You should be, because if you do, we think we can make better business outcomes. And so that to me is the question-based strategy for trying to figure out what kinds of things IT can go do is, give better answers to existing questions, right? Give answers to questions that people have been afraid to ask, and then help them think about questions that they should be asking.
Yeah, I love that. I love the first one too, because what you're really saying is dream a little dream, right? Like get out there, and because so many people are afraid of technology, right? They don't want to play with it. They don't want to break it. Sometimes they had a bad experience. They talk to their IT people and they're like, no, we can't do that. That's not going to happen. And they stop dreaming, right? But you got to envision a future for what it can be. And then you can open up the doors for what's possible. That's great. I like that.
I love it. Yep. Dream a little dream. I love it.
Dream a little dream. So you've been in IT leadership for a long time, and not going to date you or anything, but you've seen it from the machines, right? Where the focus was all about the technology, to change to processes, to the change to, well, now we need talent and people, to today where we're talking about bots and even, I don't know your manufacturing capabilities, but a lot of robotics and automation are starting to hit out there. So you've seen IT leadership go through the eras that are out there. I'm really curious, what do you see today in terms of that CIO role and what leadership means in technology? What do you need to be an excellent leader?
Wow. I think a couple things. Number one, and I'm going to go through a couple things here, but one is to be a great storyteller, right? And you create a story that people are interested in and that they can see themselves in and get excited about. One of the stories I've been telling most recently, just reflecting a little bit back on your question, is this idea about AI, right? And what does AI actually mean for us, and how do we lead in this, day and world of AI? And I think AI is a fundamental change in the way that we communicate and share information, right? And I think technologies that have changed the way we communicate and share and distribute and create information, right, are civilization changing technologies. Right. And I'm going all the way back to we went from grunting to talking, right? When language was created, that changed the way civilization worked. Right. And when language became writing, then writing became printing became audio became visual became internet. Now we're in this world of generative AI where our ability to actually, and those other previous technologies were really about sharing collective intelligence, right? And collective intelligence is really what separates humans from other animals on the planet, is that our ability to, continue to create and share collective intelligence, right? That's why we don't have to reinvent fire every time. We now know what it is, right? And so this ability to manage and deliver and create collective intelligence fundamentally changed in this generative AI world and agentic world, and that we're no longer just distributing and sharing collective intelligence, we're creating it. Right. Technology is actually helping us to create collective intelligence. And so that's a fundamental shift. And so as we, how do we lead in a world where we've changed again, this civilization level change with this ability to create and share and distribute and create collective intelligence? Well, I think we've got to think about it a way like this. And so the story I tell is about, I think about this as the way that back to, I guess, the movie Terminator: Rise of the Machines, right? So in Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, I'm good. Now I'm going to date myself, right? But also,
scary analogy for the topic you're on, but keep going.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're gonna love it. Right. And so when we go to that movie, and in the movie, the John Connor character walks into a bunker, probably somewhere in Arizona, and decides, I'm going to stop Judgment Day, right? So he's going to blow up Skynet, right? Then he walks into this old terminal, this bunker, walks into the bunker, and he sees these old paper tapes and computer disk and that kind of stuff. And so things that I'm familiar with, right? Punch cards and paper tape. And so he walks in and he says, this obviously isn't Skynet, right? And so, but he also comes to the realization and he says this, maybe I wasn't meant to stop Judgment Day. I meant to survive it, right? And so as I think about this world that we're creating with collective intelligence and new and AI, is that we're not meant to stop it, right? Nor really meant to survive it. We're meant to thrive in it, right? And so my mantra is about you plus AI makes you exponential, right? So I think about exponential AI, right? And I think in order for us to thrive with AI, one, we have to recognize the ills of AI, that it can be wrong, it can hallucinate, it can be biased, et cetera. But the ultimate cure for all those ills of AI is a human in the loop, right? Because again, AI is like that hammer, right? You can either build a window, or build a house, or break a window, right? But so that's the way I think about it. And that's the way we're going to thrive with AI, is become exponential with AI. And so I challenge everybody to think about, how do I become exponential with AI? Because I say you can worry about if AI is coming for your job, but AI is not coming for your job. Who's coming for your job is the person using AI. So I want you to be that person using AI, right? And disrupt yourself with AI and make yourself indispensable, because you are the best person in your role with AI. That's how you do it, right? It's often said the best way to predict the future is to create it. So I want you to go out there and create your own future, the best version of yourself using AI, and make yourself indispensable. So I think that's how we lead in this time, right? That we lead in the world and we push forward and we think about, how do we create a future that we want to be a part of? And leaders who help create that future that we want to be a part of and show you what your role can be in it are leaders that I adore, right? And so that's one thing I want to challenge us to. The second thing I want to challenge us as leaders is I think we're also living in this time and in this VUCA world, and everyone knows about VUCA and this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Editor here again, back with another quick explanation. So Earl just mentioned VUCA, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It's a way to describe how unpredictable and fast-changing the modern world can be, especially in business, technology, and global events. So VUCA reminds leaders and teams to stay adaptable and steady when conditions keep shifting.
And we got to move from our mindsets from episodic change to continuous change, right? And so how do we lead in a world that's surrounded by VUCA, is characterized by continuous change, right? I think that requires a different set of leadership, right? And so one of the things I've been thinking about just recently, and I've started to pin this in, is that we live in a world that's now defined by the infinity crisis mirror, right? And the infinity crisis mirror is this, and you know what infinity mirrors are. You look at them and it's just this, endless reflections, right? This idea about we've been layering crisis upon crisis upon crisis, which may have began with, if you don't go back just a few years, we can go back to the healthcare crisis, which we then layered on a social justice crisis. Then we layered on an economic crisis, then a leadership crisis, then an ongoing mental health crisis, then, an expanding, climate crisis, a geopolitical crisis, and so on and on and on. And so as we think about this layering of these crises, one upon each other, now it's impacting all constituents. It's impacting individuals, families, communities, companies, countries, right? And so each one has to reflect in that mirror. We all have to look in this mirror of these crises upon crises. And that's going to call for new, because again, it's continuous, right? And so now in this world of continuous change and continuous challenge, we have to need a new brand of leadership. And I'm going to brand this new brand of leadership. Again, I love the military and I love some of the things that the military represents. In this movie, I think Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood in it, talks about what happens when change happens to you. And he says, Marines improvise, adapt, and overcome, right? I believe that's the challenge for today for today's leaders, right? Improvisational leadership. We need to be able to improvise. We need to be able to adapt, and we need to be able to overcome, right?
Right.
And we're going to do that with, agility, resiliency, and anti-fragility, right? And saying, how do we create a world of continuous change? We've got to change our mindset to train ourselves, our individuals, our families, our communities, our companies, our countries. They have to be agile, they have to be resilient, and they have to be anti-fragile. They can't break. They have to be able to pivot when they need to pivot. They need to be resilient and find opportunity in chaos, and they need to not break, right? And so I believe today's leadership calls for that improvisational adaptation and overcoming through being agile, anti-fragile, and resilient. And if we teach those principles into leaders today, we will be able to survive the next 1,000 years. And so that, to me, is the call of action for today.
I have one observation about you. I've known you a while, and you are eternally optimistic. You have always had a positive attitude, moving things forward. In fact, when I used to work with you, you would always say, I'm like, how's it going, Earl? And you'd be like, it's great. Another day above ground, right? Just to keep forward, moving forward. And I really appreciated the attitude, regardless of the adversity you were facing. You always had this must-win attitude. I'm going to continue to persevere and get there. And in your career, you've proven just that. So I have to ask the question, where does that fuel come from? Like, you've faced a ton of adversity getting to where you are today. And how do you keep yourself powered up and smiling and, driving it forward?
Wow, that's a great story, and maybe it comes maybe from a couple of areas. Number one would be growing up and we lived in the barrio, right? So I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and was born in Connecticut, but ended up growing up a little bit in El Paso, Texas, and we lived in the southern part of below the highway, which is the barrio, and starting in there. My grandfather, who was a colonel in the army, was the first person I saw persevere. Right, so he was the guy who became my surrogate dad, because I was born like I said in Stamford, Connecticut. My brother, 11 months younger than me, was born in Norwalk, Connecticut. My brother, 11 months younger than him, was born in Junction City, Kansas. Right. And we moved 26 times, and I stopped counting after that.
Wow.
And so my birth father left us when I was 2.5 years old. And so we ended up going to my grandparents' house and growing up there, while my mom, tried to find her footing in the world. And so we grew up there, and my grandfather, really became my surrogate dad. Right. So that was, he was a military hero, served in, 30 years in multiple conflicts. Right. And so he's a military hero, and he also was a civil rights hero. So he worked with Hubert Humphrey to help integrate El Paso. Right.
Oh, wow.
And so, that's where it starts with my grandfather's influence on me. And he's the one who actually encouraged me to go to West Point. And that's why I ended up going to West Point, through his encouragement. And that, begins the story of resiliency. And he would always say, don't let your circumstances become a limitation. Right. And hard work will eventually pay off. And those are the lessons that I learned from him. And, tenacity, and sticking to it, and driving through to achieve objectives were really, based upon, my lessons I learned from him. And my mom, did that as well. We were living in Arizona, and it was when the Martin Luther King Day was passed as the voters passed it, and then Governor Meekum ended up, vetoing it. And so my mom worked to actually get it reinstated, right? So my mom brought in Rosa Parks, brought in a bunch of musicians and different things, and served and worked to get MLK Day back reinstated, right? Amazing. So tenacious, tenacity, every day above ground is a great day. Oh, it's a great opportunity. So that's a lesson from my mom. And she pushed forward and made that work. And so she's credited with getting MLK Day, reestablished in Arizona. And so I had that as, so my grandfather, my mom, right. I'll even say, my wife is an important part of this too, as well. And she's a lawyer by day, but a yarn shop owner by night. Right. And so she owns a yarn shop, and I encourage people to go check it out. It's Parker Avenue at www.parkeravenue.knits.com. But the thing about her story, as she went to put this yarn shop together, and now getting into its fourth year, she was, she brought a couple ladies to go work with her to help her stand up this yarn shop. And she was driving in the car one day with these ladies, there's about four of them, and all of them were cancer survivors.
Wow.
And so breast cancer survivors. And so she was listening to them talk. And they were talking about, the challenges and the tribulations and the difficulties of surviving and going through that horrible experience of breast cancer. And they all went through it. And now it's become this Parker Avenue is really moved from being a yarn store to a community service organization, right?
Wow.
And it brings together people who want to talk about things, and knitting is an amazing thing. In fact, her name Parker Avenue is named after Dorothy Parker, who's this renowned kind of feminist who was a sharp tongue and drove community and drove womanhood and fierceness in terms of delivering and making change in the world. That was Dorothy Parker. Parker Avenue is a symbolic of that. And these women who've come together to talk about not only, how to survive and thrive beyond breast cancer and ring the bell, but other life challenges. And that's now become Parker Avenue, right? And so as I look at that and what those ladies had to go through, yes, every day above ground is a great day.
Great story. Well, to round out the podcast, what I like to do is ask some speed round questions for you. Just a couple of things here, quirky things to get some interesting answers out of you. The first one is something that you either Googled or asked AI that you probably should already known as an IT professional.
I'll say it this way, because there's that famous article, I think it was Time magazine, said, is Google making us lazy? Right. So
answer yes.
Answer yes. So is AI making me lazy? Yes, sometimes. So I will ask it, things that I should know. I can't remember anything specifically at the moment, but it would be like, it's easier to just ask the AI than it is to pick up the book. So I'll just ask the AI.
So true. So true. Even now, a button on your phone, just push it, and there you go. Yeah.
There you go. So you say, what's the capital of Texas? I should probably know that, but I can just ask.
That's right. If you thought about it, you might get it, but if you ask AI, you'll definitely get the answer quick.
That's right.
I like that. I like that. How about the most overused buzzword today? Whether management buzzword, IT buzzword, what are you sick of hearing?
I am sick of not hearing, but experiencing transformation. And so I think we're on transformation overload, right? And so, everything is transforming, and people just say, if you don't like something, just call it transformation. And we have, organizations transforming, companies transforming, we have, leadership transforming, we got, you name it.
I guess it's probably a good time to let you know that we'll also be talking about transformation in episode 9 of this season.
And so
it's true.
Probably, I would say transformation. And
back to your infinity mirror. It's like forever transforming, right? So what are we doing? Calling it out. It's just nonstop. Makes sense. All right. How about if IT leadership were a football position, what position would it be?
That's a good one. I wonder if it'd be a position or would it be the football?
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's the thing that scores. It's the thing that gets you to the first down. It's that football has to be where you need it to be to get the outcome that you want, right?
Yeah.
And so I would put, I'd say we're the football. Right. They're helping the other positions block for us or pass us around or catch us and get us into the end zone and all of that stuff, but you need IT to score.
And to your point, it's how you use it that makes all the difference in the world, right?
Yep.
That's good. That's good.
And of course, living in Detroit, I'd say, we go on fourth down, right? So.
Okay. Let's break that one down. So Earl, who lives in Detroit, is referencing the Detroit Lions football team. Under Coach Dan Campbell, the Lions have embraced an aggressive, analytics-driven approach in recent years that treats fourth downs as scoring or momentum opportunities rather than automatic punts. So statistically, modern NFL data shows teams often gain more expected points by going for it, especially near midfield or an opponent's territory. So when you see the Lions line up and stay on the field instead of sending out the punter, it's not gambling, it's math mixed with confidence.
That's so we go for it on fourth down. So yeah. So use your IT on fourth down.
Awesome. All right. And last question, just for fun here. If you had a wish and it would be either the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl or for you to get a neural link where you could have all of human knowledge pumped into your brain from the internet and know it backwards and forwards, what would it be?
Well, that's quite simple, but now you're taking me to the movie The Riddler when he actually tried to get that knowledge. All of this. Yeah. I don't want that.
Yeah. I guess it makes it an easier choice when you put it in that context.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, I don't want to be that guy. So yeah, easy question. The Cowboys win the Super Bowl, and I will make a bold prediction that will happen in 26. Until it doesn't happen. And then I'll make it again in 27, and 28, and 29, and so on.
You got to ride that train until it's end of the line, right?
That's right.
I'm with you. For
sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Earl. This was fantastic. Really enjoyed having you on today. Some amazing insights. Just anything that you have that you want to offer before we wrap up the podcast?
No, I just want to thank you, Doug, for the opportunity to share and to, pontificate and opine on some of these topics. And I love the principle that you have behind this is that, it's like behind the IT person is a person, right? I'm a big believer that everyone has a story. You just don't know what it is, right? Yeah. So ask. And I appreciate your asking and hearing a bit more about my story. And I just think, you got to meet people where they are, talk to them in their own currency, understand their story. And through that, I think you can get to learn other people and you can create a plus one just through that activity of asking somebody about their story.
So there you have it, folks. IT leadership personified, or should I call it improvisational leadership? Earl challenged us, as he does his own team, to dream a little and stay curious. He taught us that technology itself is just a tool. It can build a house or break a window. It all depends on the hand that wields it. But when it's wielded right, technology should feel indistinguishable from magic. Next up, we're shifting from the football field to the fight cage. Our next guest is going to talk about cybersecurity through the lens of an MMA fighter. Because when the hackers come swinging at 2 a.m., you want someone in your corner who can take a punch and land one right back. If you're liking our podcast, please subscribe and follow us, or drop us a comment, especially on Earl's Ask. What are some questions you've wanted to ask IT but never have? Until then, let's remember his advice. Every day above ground is a great day, which means today you've got the choice to pick up a hammer, build something worth keeping, and maybe even create some magic along the way.